the previous lecture, we actually learned how to create a test WhatsApp chatbot, and we were actually able to integrate both our local development environment with an actual online development environment using Ngrok as a webhook. So in this tutorial, we're actually going to look at actually adding that is formality, sort of like a conversational workflow on our chatbot. On the previous lecture, we actually learned how to just see the workflow, like how actually a chatbot works. So right now we are going to add personality to the chatbot whilst also adding functionality to our chatbot, and we are going to see how we can actually do that. Okay, so first things first, I want you to open your Twilio console. Just make sure your Twilio console is open. I'll also be using WhatsApp Web for demonstration purposes. Okay. So in this tutorial, we're actually going to utilize what is called an API. So what is an API? So I'll use Microsoft Paint to actually demonstrate it. So let me switch tabs. Okay. So let's imagine a specific scenario. Let's say this is actually our chatbot right now, of which this is a web server that is actually available on the internet. There are actually circumstances where you want actually to connect two different services together, which necessarily does not work together. So basically we can do that by using an API. So an API is just a set of rules that is set out for different applications to actually work together. So in API, we're just talking of an application programming interface where we're able to connect two different things, or two different services, or two different and identical services to actually work together. So basically, let's take this as our chatbot here, and then let's take this as a web server on the internet right now. So imagine a scenario where we actually want to get data, maybe let's say from a WHO website about COVID information. There is no actual way we can necessarily get this data like straight from WHO, like for example going to their support page or emailing them asking for this data, like they would not actually respond. But if you noticed, most of these websites, for example WHO, they've actually developed APIs in order to allow developers to actually fetch their data through a remote way. So how does this happen? We actually utilize an API here in our chatbot in order to fetch content, for example, from this website. So what we do is, for example, if we request like WHO data here, like if a user requests WHO data here, maybe COVID-19 patients in Zimbabwe, what happens is the chatbot actually sends a request to the API available at WHO, and then the API at WHO actually analyzes this request, and then it finds out, okay, this user wants data that has to do with COVID-19 patients, and then what it does next is actually return this information to the WhatsApp chatbot as an object. So information is actually returned as an object. So when it returns this information is now processed with our chatbot and is actually given to the user. So how does APIs work? So there is a term that is actually used when we're talking of APIs, which is called an endpoint. So endpoint, they actually work like a connection media, sort of like a connection method, where we actually, which we actually use in order to interact with an API. So take an endpoint as actually as a URL, like just a link, for example, google.com. So for example, WHO might develop the API, and in order to access that API, you may need just, for example, to enter a /API on the WHO website, and then you'll be able to access these APIs. So this is what we call an endpoint, for example, who.com/API. That's what we call an endpoint. So an endpoint is almost like a connector which actually connects us to an API available at home. I'll take an example of basic applications that are actually available on the phone. Let's take a weather application. So weather apps are responsible for giving you weather data, right? But where is that data actually coming from? So this data is actually coming from data centers, where geographers and meteorologists are actually collecting data and feeding them into a database. So let's take this as a database. Maybe it's open weather map giving us information, maybe giving us a database. Let's take this as a weather database. So how does our application actually know the current weather or the current weather patterns available at a specific time? What it does is it actually sends a request to the weather database requesting, okay, what's the current weather today? What the database does, it actually looks up its records and see the current entered information and returns that information to the user or to the application as an object, and then the application actually decrypts that object into information that the user can actually understand, saying, oh, it's 90 degrees Celsius, it's 20 degrees, it's 36 degrees. So that's what actually happened, and that's actually an API. I think you'll better understand it when you're actually using it. So let's get into developing interactivity and functionality into a chatbot. So we'll open our previous project, and what we're going to do, let's actually delete everything and just leave the structure right here. Okay, so this is actually the basic structure of our Python application of our chatbot. So first things first, we need to actually define a route. If you remember from the previous lectures, we use the @. If you actually remember from the previous lectures, we use the @ annotation. So the @ annotation actually defines, or actually tells Flask we want to define a route. So @app dot route, and then just put brackets and then colons slash. So the slash actually means if we did not receive anything on this route, it actually shows this slash. I'll give you an example of this. So let's just use this. Okay, so slash, and then what are the methods that we are currently going to use? So we go with methods is equals to, and then these brackets here, we call this in Python, they actually represent an array of things, almost like a list. Let's take them as a list, and then we're going to use get and post. So you may be wondering, what is this get and what is this post? So the get parameters allows us to get information from a URL, and then the post parameter allows us to post information. For example, when we are changing information between our chatbot and Twilio, we're actually posting information to Twilio, and then Twilio posts information to the WhatsApp API. That's why we're telling it to post. So we've actually defined our route. Press enter, and then now we need to define a function for this route. So I'll call this home so that you can actually see what's happening, and then just put these curly braces and then put a colon, press enter. What do we need to happen? So to test out this process, I will say if we did not receive anything here on this URL, we want to return something, right? So I want to return, just type return so that it can return. So return statement will actually return anything that we give it here. So I'll write just some basic HTML code, h1 tag. Let's just say hello world, and then close this tag. Okay, and then let's also define another route. So this is the route for our chatbot entry right now. So you just say again app.route. So I'll give an example for these routes. So let's take an instance. If you open a website like which website can we use? Okay, let's use iHarare news so that I can actually show you this. Okay, let's open iHarare news. So if we look at the first root here, we're saying if we receive nothing, if we just receive a basic URL without anything in front, we're supposed to return this. So take this as iHarare. We're saying if we just receive iHarare.com, just return this to them, this home page to them. But then let's click, for example, an article. This. Let me close this ad. Are you seeing now the URL actually changes? So this is actually another route. So this is actually the same as the second route that we're going to create, for example. So put quotes and say /SMS. So we are now changing the route. For example, if we receive iHarare.com, we're going to show this. If you are receive iHarare.com / style icon Zimbabwe awards, for example, we'll be putting this into the URL. So if we receive the URL plus this, what are we going to do? We're going to return an article which is relating to the style icon Zimbabwe awards. So that's what actually happens. So let's define our URL. You can actually define what you want here. I'll call mine let's just call it SMS. Let's call it SMS. And then don't forget to define the methods. As you can see, it's actually the same workflow. This equals to just typing the same thing, so you can actually copy and paste it. So just copy from here and then just paste it. Okay, and then we now have to actually define a method which actually works with this URL. So what you're going to do is define bot or anything. You can name it anything that you want, or chatbot or a botnet. Let's call it botnet. Okay. And then put a colon, press enter, and start writing. So Python actually works with what are called tabs. So when you press enter, as you can see, it actually moves 4 tabs from the right. So that's how Python actually defines the differences between functions and logic. That's why you're seeing it does not go to the start here. So let's actually define our logic for our bot. So first of all, we actually have to check for an incoming message from a user on WhatsApp. So I'll call it MSG. So this actually take this as a variable. So a variable, take a variable as a box, right? So a variable stores something. Maybe let's take it as a box. Maybe we have a box here, and then this box is actually storing apples, for example. So this box will be a variable, and then these apples will actually be the contents of the variable. So what can we do if we want to get the contents of these apples? We can actually call the variable here, which is the box, because the apples are actually in the box. So that is what we are doing here. So we are actually assigning every message that is sent by the user to this variable. So saying MSG equals, and then we utilize this import that we actually use called request, which is now requests dot forms. Do you remember this? Dot forms or dot values, whatever you want, dot get. If we get errors, we'll see them along the way. What do you want to get? We want to get the body. So let's say body dot lower. Do you remember this function? We are saying for every message that we actually receive from the user, we want it to be put to lowercase. We want it to be processed in lowercase terms. Whether the user puts in uppercase, we want it to be processed in lowercase. That's the function. That's the Python function for lower. Okay, and then we have to manage also the response, which I'll call resp is equals to, and then we actually have to utilize this messaging response. So I'll just call it is equals to messaging response. Okay, now we're able to get the message from the user, and we're also able to respond to the user. Okay, now we're back to using conditional flows. In the future tutorials we'll be using machine learning and artificial intelligence to make this bot smarter. Okay, so what are we going to do? So the bot that we're currently going to develop is a bot which can actually respond with quotes to a user. If a user asks a quote, it actually responds with a random quote to the user. So how are we going to do it? So we have to utilize actually an API. So you can actually go here and say APIs for random quotes. Okay, then you can check APIs for random quotes to use. But in the meantime, since we are not diving deeper into APIs, I'm going to utilize this API, which is called API dot, if I'm not mistaken, it should be quotable.io/random. Let's see if it's still working. Okay, as you can see, this API has actually returned information. I code the API. So Quotable is actually the website, and they are hosted. They've hosted their API as a subdomain, and then by using this random here, it actually generates a random. So let me refresh it. As you can see, it's actually putting out random code. So it's now our duty to be able to extract this information and actually send it to a user whenever a user actually requested this information. So we're actually going to use this as an API. Okay, so how we're going to do it? What you're going to do is we have to check for a parameter. For example, how do we want to show this to a user? What does the user have to say in order to show this? So we want to check, for example, if a user includes quote in his or her honey message to the WhatsApp chatbot. So what we say is if, and then quotes, so that we show that it's a string of characters. So if quote, like in the message of a user in MSG, so we're saying if there is text called quote in the message that we actually receive from the user, then what are we going to do? Put a colon. Okay, what are we now going to do? We are now going to request information from this API, and how we're going to do it. Remember, we actually installed a library called requests. So what we can actually do is just go on top here and say import requests. So first of all, we need to be able to store this information in the variable that we actually extract from the API. So I'll call it results here is equals to, and then now we need to utilize this request package. We say requests here, and then request has a parameter called .get, and then when you say .get, it will ask us, okay, what is the URL you want us to get information from? And now we need to put in the quotable URL, which is https api.quotable.io/random. Okay, so right now we are actually getting information from Quotable for free, and we're actually storing it into the results variable, but we haven't utilized it yet. And then now, remember, if we are going to actually receive an object, so we need to actually verify if we actually receive an object. So in Python, how do we do that? So we actually say if results, which is here, we are now checking if we actually receive the results. So if the results, as you can see, dot, so the request function actually have a parameter called status code. So if you remember from using Ngrok, it actually showed that a status of 200 saying everything is okay. So we actually need to check status underscore code so that we can be able to actually understand if it's working. Is equals to 200. And then what are we going to do? We're now going to assign this information into a new variable, so that, remember, it's an object, and then I'm also going to handle this object. So Python actually introduced a way of actually handling objects, which is actually called JSON. We'll explain it better later. So what you're going to do is create another variable for storing this object now. So let's just call it, what can I call it? Results object. Let's just call it results object. It's not a good way though. Equals to, and then we need to get this variable called results dot JSON. In order to change this result into JSON, JSON is actually a readable format where we can actually extract these results. For example, this is actually a dictionary, which we can actually change into a JSON so that we can be able to extract information from it. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want now to be able to extract the code only. As you can see, we have the ID, which is here, we have the tags, which is here, and we have the content. So what we only want is actually the content here. So what we do is a method called indexing, or an operation called indexing. We want to actually index these results. So what we do is, for example, let's just call it the code itself is equals to, and then what we're going to do is called string formatting. So we're going to release a lecture on Python, like in the next lecture, so that we can actually explain string formatting. Just type an F and then put quotations, and then put these curly braces. I don't know, you can call them square brackets, I don't know, a lot of people call it and then what we're going to do, remember we called this results object. We're now going to take our results underscore object and then brackets here. So this bracket will actually define what we want. So what we want from this object, we actually want the content here, the content only. So we're going to type in content. That's what we want. We actually want the content. Okay, so let's just work with the content for now. Maybe we can go with the author or something like that, but we'll edit it later. Okay, so what we want to happen, for example, if the actual status code is not equals to 200. So what we do is, for example, if you click here, see it continues like from this line, but we want it to start from this line. So we can actually press backspace and actually write else. So else, we're saying if we don't get status 200, if you don't manage to get the code, this is what we want to happen. And then colon, press enter, and then we want to present a message. So let's change this quote is equals to I could not fetch a quote. I could not fetch a quote. And then after we're done, okay, so after we're done, we actually have to return a message here. We actually have to return a response like to the user. So now what we're going to do is response from the previous lecture dot message, and then what we want to do is actually message the code to the user, and then we have to return a string of this response. Okay, I know that actually was a lot to deal with. That actually was a lot to actually talk about, but it's now time to test it. Okay, so let me clear the spaces. So what we're doing in summary, we're checking if there is quote in the message that we receive from the user, and then we are getting results from this random API. We'll show you how to actually utilize these APIs when you actually deep dive into project specifics, like from the medical projects to different projects that we're going to do. And then we are storing these results into a JSON object so that we can be able to extract different attributes like ID, but like length, like date modified, like author. And then we are now fetching a specific object of these results. Remember, we stored this in the object called results object, and then we are now taking this object, and then we're taking an attribute called content from this object. If we did not get it, we are going to return this to the user, which is I could not fetch a quote. Let's just say sorry, maybe that works, right? And then we are now messaging the quote to the user. It's either if we manage to get it, we're messaging the quote. If we don't, we're messaging also this quote, like I could not fetch a quote, and then we're going to return it as a string. So let's check it. So terminal, new terminal. Okay, wait for the terminal to load. Okay, let's go with Flask run. If we have an error, so we fix it. Okay, seems Flask is running. So remember what we need to do. We actually have to forward this port. Remember, this is a local development environment. We need to forward this port to an online server. Okay, so it's now time for Ngrok. So open your Ngrok account. Let's open Ngrok. Let's log in. Log into Ngrok. I'm sorry, you would have to do this like each and every time. Ngrok actually upgraded their system, so it's going to be a bit of a problem. Okay, so go to your auth token and then just copy your auth token. Okay, and then after you've copied your auth token, what I want you to do is actually navigate to your C drive. Navigate to C drive here, and then I want you to click on users, and then I want you to click on your username. Mine is answer here, and then I want you to find .ngrok2, open it, and then delete this YAML file. Just delete it. Okay, so there's nothing in there, and then go back to your Ngrok installation or Ngrok extraction folder, and then just type in cmd from here to open cmd, or just press shift and then right click and then open cmd, and then again you have to write Ngrok auth token and then paste the auth token, press enter. Okay, it has actually configured it, and then now type http Ngrok http 5000. Okay, so we now have a new address. So you have to do this every time Ngrok changes addresses, so you need to update your addresses on Twilio as well. Okay, because Twilio will be using the previous old address. So copy this HTTPS address and then go to Twilio console, go to messaging, go to settings, go to sandbox settings. Wait for it to load. Okay, now replace this, remove it, and then paste in the new URL, and then put a slash, and then it now depends on what you have put as our URL. So we've actually put /SMS, so we need to put /SMS here, and then /SMS here, and then now just save it. Okay, so remember I've been talking of this slash right now. Like if you actually just put a URL on your browser, we should get this without putting the /SMS. So let's just put this URL in the browser just to check. happens. As you can see, we get hello world, which is actually what we wrote here. So there's actually nothing. What if we actually put SMS here? It says internal server error. Why? Because this is our chatbot's webhook. It does not return anything to the server. Okay, so I'll go back to Twilio and then try it out. Send a WhatsApp message. Okay, so I have to actually use this code. So join relationship prevent. I'm just going to copy it and then go to bot here and then just paste it here. Enter. Okay, so we're now in the sandbox. So it's now time for the moment of truth. So remember we said if I use a message is quote. So let's check if you are getting it. So let's just type quote. Nothing happened. Okay. Requests object is no attribute forms, so it's supposed to be form. So let's change forms to form. Just delete the s. Request.form. Press Ctrl plus C. Again, Flask run. That's I'm good with Python errors. You can actually get the error. You look at the bottom here. So if you don't know what an error means, just copy it and then just paste it on your browser. You'll get solutions to it. Here there are a lot of articles which actually shows you how to solve these errors. So let's try it again. Nothing again. Okay. So we have received a code. Do not wait. The time will never be just right. Start where you stay and blah blah blah. So it's actually working. So remember we actually defined if there's actually a word quote in our message. So we can actually put anything in here. Even any message like can I get a quote please? It's working. Another quote please. It's working. Even if you write it in Shona or any other language of yours, I don't know, it just works as long as the word quote is in there. As you see, we've actually added functionality to a chatbot right now. Don't worry if you still don't understand Python. You actually have an introductory course to Python. So we can even do the same, like for example with images. We can actually utilize an API. Like for example, we can go here and say APIs for cat images, and then you can search an API that you want, which can actually provide you with cat images. So any API can do. Okay, so let's work with let's also get an image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with an API called Catus. So I just researched these APIs, catus.com. So it's just cat as a service. It actually offers us cat images. You see, it says just give me a cat. Boom. It gives us a cat. Give me a cat. It gives us a cat. So we can actually use this API. As you can see, it shows us how to use this API. So for example, if we want to return a cat, we actually use this URL here, and then we just put /cat. it will return a random cat, /cat. Then if you want a cat with a tag, we put /cat and then :tag. If you want a cat GIF, /cat/GIF. And then if we want a cat saying something, we say /cat /says/text. So let's actually utilize this API following this procedure. We actually want to return a random cat to use this API, so we use this. So let's go back to our code. So as you can see, we say if caught in message, you see there's a line here. It actually shows us our control flow, so we're going to write in the same line. Just press back, and as you can see, I'm now aligned with the first if statement here. This if statement actually falls under this if statement, so we're saying if cat in the message that we receive from the user. If the user says cat, we're going to return a cat to the user right now. So remember, the APIs actually showed us how to actually deal with getting out a cat. So what you're going to do for getting a cat, we're just going to say response. So remember, response is actually utilizing the messaging response. So when we say response.message, it responds with a text. So what if we want to respond with a picture, we say response.media, and then quotes. Let's type that address. It's catters.com. I'm just copying from the URL here. And then we want to get a random cat, right? And then we just have to put /cat here. Okay. Then let's just go and then say /cat. Just that. As simple as that. catters.com /cat. So let's just put https /catters.com /get that orders. So these APIs actually have documentations that can actually help you to with them. Okay. So let's check. Okay, let's stop the saver. Flask run. Okay, I'm just going to say cat in here. Okay, it says messaging response. Object is no attribute media. Okay, let's check it. Okay. So maybe what we can do is we can actually create another variable here. Saying media cat is equals to response dot message here, and then let's go back and say media cat. Let's just say media cat. So change response and say media cat dot media. Let's check if that works. I don't know if it will work. We'll just trying here. So there are a lot of errors. That's the fun part about coding. Okay, the function responded without a return statement. Oh, that's okay. So what I can do is return str. What can I say? Return str media cat. Let's just try and see if it works. Flask. Yeah, this is hard to work with. Okay, it said okay. So let's wait for a picture here. It says everything is working, but it isn't giving me any picture. Okay, let's wait for no random pick came. Let's check it again. Okay, it's showing us 200. It should actually respond a peg. I don't know, maybe it's my connection or something. Okay, it says everything is well. Okay. Okay, everything is well here. There's nothing we can actually change. What if you say return spot? Let's see if that changes anything, or it's just the network which is not working. Maybe it's just the network which is actually not working. So check it. Return. Okay, boom. So we actually have a cat image, as you can see. Let's say cat again. Cat. Okay, so at least we are somewhere. Okay, another, we have a random cat right now. Cat. Okay, say let's do something crazy. Give me a cat image and a quote together. Let's wait. Let's see if it works for us. It's 200, okay, so it's actually the network with this delaying here. 200. Okay, so everything is working quite well. We're getting cat images. We're actually getting quotes. So you see the best use cases for this when actually developing the industry standard projects, maybe for educational purposes, when actually focusing on creating an educational chatbot and medical chatbot, real estate chatbots, entertainment chatbots, maybe an events booking chatbot when we're actually dealing with APIs and also databases, storing information in a database. So everything is working. So how can you actually modify this to less code? Let's see. Okay, so here I think we can actually modify saying response dot message dot media. I don't know if that works. I just want to try it. So stop the C for Ctrl plus C, flash run. Okay. Give me a cat, please. Okay, that didn't work. Function object is no attribute media. Dispense that message. Okay, so let's just put it back here. Media. Okay. Stop the server. Flash run again. So as you can see, we've actually made a use case of how we can actually make powerful chatbots. As you can see, we can actually make something which is more powerful than this. Okay, 200. If you get 200, it shows it has been a success. here, quote indicate. So we've actually successfully created our first use case of a chatbot by using adding functionality to this chatbot. So thank you for watching and have a great day. I hope you are also excited. So we're going to utilize many of these APIs. We're going to utilize a website called Rapid API. We were actually going to utilize a lot of the APIs right here, from medical APIs to create disease diagnosing chatbots, medical chatbots, entertainment chatbots, real estate chatbots. Yeah, a lot of chatbots that we're going to develop with this website. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.